Now we actually going to see about the structure of pollen grains. Previous classes I discussed about how do pollen grain formation take place. Okay, you know that pollen grain formation take place when sporogenous cells start multiplying by meiosis process. Then ultimately it forms out haploid cell, and each and every haploid cells called pollen grain. And pollen grain, you know that is a male reproductive cell, okay, of the flowering plants. And if you go inside the pollen grain, okay, pollen grain is the N or haploid structure. Okay, pollen grain, you have heard many stories about the pollen grain. Sometimes it stay for long period of time, it active, sometimes it active or viable for very less time, or 30 minutes 40 minutes for some plants. Okay, the viability actually depend of the of various plants in various way. Okay, now we go to the structure of the pollen grain. If you see the structure of the pollen grain, structurally this has two layers. One outer layer, another is inner layer. Outer layer is called exine. Look at this outer layer. Outer layer is called exine and inner layer is called intine. Okay, outer layer exine, inner layer intine. First I say detail, I will come to details about the structure and the component of this exine and intine structure. And then you go for the vacuoles present inside the cell, and there is tube nucleus, there is the generative cells. Okay, these are present inside the pollen grain. Now, many important part is the exine structure. If we talk about the exine is the hardest substance, organic substance ever found. It is not degraded by any temperature, acidic conditions, by anything you can degrade that exine layer. These are the layer exine layer. Exine layer is not degraded by anything. Exine layer. Look at the exine layer. It is not degraded by anything. Exile layer, the what is the component of exile layer? Exile layer actually made up of sporopollenin. Sporo. Exine is mixed up of sporopollenin. It is the hardest substance ever found. Okay, that is why it is very, very difficult to degrade. That is why this viability for long period of time. So now we come the intine layer. This is present in the inside layer. This is the intine layer. This is made up of. This is also hardest, but not as hard of the exine. It's a pectocellulose. It is made up of pectocellulose. It is made up of pectocellulose. Okay, I think first of all, what you need to understand about the layer of the pollen grain. First layer is called exine, is the outer layer, and which is made up of sporopollenin. It is the hardest substance ever found, and hardest biological substance I am talking about. And the intine layer, inside layer is called intine, which made up of pectocellulose, cellulose and pectin. Okay, now if you go inside, there you see some vacuoles are present, and there are two nucleus are present. Two cells are there. It is one called tube nucleus, and another is called generative cells. And generative cells is actually helping fertilization. So tube nucleus help in pollen tube formations after that. So initially it was not like that. Initially that cell is called one is called vegetative cells, another is called generative cells, and inside the cell it divides into two cells, on generative and tube nucleus. I think this is the structure of pollen grain. I again repeat all the things again. First of all, pollen grain is a male reproductive cell, okay, of flowering plant. Pollen, I think pollen grain is outer layer, inner layer are there. Outer layer is called exine layer, which is the hardest substance biologically, and which is not degraded by any temperature, acidic condition, salty condition, any other biological substance can degrade this. So exine is the strongest layer, hardest layer, and inside this, and which is sorry again I am repeating this, exine made up of sporopollenin, the substance. Okay, and inside the layer is called intine, which is made up of pectocellulose. And inside this you see there are some vegetative cells or tube nucleus and generative cells. With these many vacuoles are there. This is the whole structure of pollen grains. And pollen grains, when it get matured, it moves, it dehisces from the anther it produces inside the anther and goes for the pollinations when you fall on the stigma, and that's cause of pollinations. So I think you understood the pollen grain structure. Okay, so this is very important to know about the pollen grain structure. Okay, I think you understood. Anything you are facing problem to understand, you can ask me. Okay.